What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a DIY video for you guys. That's right, we have a revised version of our Add W1 catch can. They just released version 3.3. We're going to go over some of the things that changed in this revision. What is it going to do? Do you need it? And also, of course, the installation video for you guys. So sit back, enjoy. If you have any other questions, concerns that I didn't cover in this video, go ahead and please comment below and I'll get back to you promptly. But other than that, guys, enjoy the video. Now, as you guys may know, when the engine is running, it actually turns the intake manifold into a huge vacuum, which sucks in all the blow-by back into the intake system. Things like water, carbon, ash, etc. Can potentially mix with your oil. It can end up in less engine protection and can actually damage some components in the process. So with things like walnut blasting to clean up your intake valves, that's one of the ways you'll have to kind of mitigate that if you don't do something about it now, which is where the catch can system comes in. So version 3 does a great job at actually picking up those blow-by gases, but the only thing is that it doesn't do a better job while the engine is actually accelerating or wide open throttle. It only really works while the engine is idling. Now, what does this mean for you guys? What this means is the catch can that I actually showed you guys in my last video is still pretty good and pretty functional. You can use that for daily use, spirited use, but it's not going to give you the best protection, or it's not going to function how you want it to. Things like when you're constantly in wide open throttle, racing the track, and that sort of thing. So that catch can is good for daily driving, spirited driving, as I mentioned, and to give you the protection you need from a day-to-day basis. But you're actually someone who's focused on more performance side of things, and you want to constantly beat on your car and track your car. You want to get the most out of your car while still getting the most protection from your catch can system. The version 3.3 is for you because it's going to offer a different setup that is going to actually allow the blow-by to actually be picked up into the catch can even while the car is at wide open throttle or acceleration. Now, you're probably wondering from a hardware standpoint, what has changed on version 3.3 compared to version 3? So during this install, it requires us to still remove the hose from the intake manifold down to the PVC per usual, like version 3 required. But at this time, we're also going to remove the passenger side intake to get down to the PVC hose down there, which we're actually going to be using for this installation. It's going to add an extra source of vacuum just before the upstream of the throttle body there, and it's also going to give us that added source of vacuum into the catch can and catch all that blow-by. So looking forward to beginning on this install. Let's go ahead and unbox all the contents of the catch can kit. Let's take a look at what we have here on our new revised version of the catch can. This is pretty packed in here. We have some hoses. Of course, we have some clamps there. We have our standard bracket. We have, holy cow, they really packed this. Here we go. Here's some of the new components. We have a breather filter there. We actually have more hoses, and per usual, our hardware. And we also have the catch can. Now, I actually have the carbon fiber catch can here. It has carbon fiber up top and around the catch can itself with the red rings, and also have the red rod locking ring here in this kit. So this is actually a really nice quality catch can, just like this last one that I have. So I can't wait to get this installed for you guys. Before we begin, per usual, make sure you remove the engine cover to give yourself some room. And just like last time, we have our setup here where I actually go over some of the components of this kit. Now, this catch can is a little bit different. It has got a dual port side, and it also has the single port side, of course. Now we're using a series of check valves, and the hoses are going to be hooked up a little bit different. So this video is definitely going to help you guys install this and make sure you don't make any mistakes. Of course, they include a very nice diagram for you guys to use for your installation kit. But other than that, guys, this is actually a really well put together kit that I have for everything that you'll need, from hoses to clamps to fittings. Everything is here. So let's begin by preparing our catch can here with our inlets, and let's actually start putting these in. Now, don't forget that these actually have O-rings. Now, the O-rings are a very important part. Do not lose those. If you lose those, you may want to get a replacement right away before continuing the installation. And Teflon tape would definitely also help. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and actually put the O-rings on the fittings and thread them in to the catch can. And then with our 19 mil, we're actually going to tighten it up and repeat the process for all of the sides. Just be very careful not to over tighten this and take your time. You do not want to damage any components on the catch can. Once you start getting quite a bit of resistance, you can stop, and that'll let you know that it's pretty tight in there. Right there, I think I feel comfortable. I'm just going to double check, but it shouldn't take a whole lot of tightening to get it in exactly where you need it to be. So that right there is tight. I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process for the other two sides and move on to the next step. So now that we have our catch can all assembled up how we want it, we're actually going to go ahead and start removing the factory hose that needs to come off, which is one right here next to the oil cap, which is, this is the PVC side, and the other one that goes all the way down to the manifold. It's all one piece. Just go ahead and remove it. You can remove it by using some pliers. It's probably your best bet to get the resistance off, and slide the hose off. All right, now that I've already slid the clamp out of the way, what I'm going to do now is use a small screwdriver to kind of push the hose out of the inlet there. Just like that, the hose is pried off. All right, so this one might be a little bit more difficult. It's wedged in there pretty good. So we're going to take the tension off and then try to do our best to pull off the hose. There you go. We got it just about all the way off. There it goes. And we just gotta feed that hose out of there. It's actually a lot harder than it looks because you have limited space. I've kind of loosened up my intercooler before the installation here, so I'm gonna go ahead and wiggle it around and get the hose off. Now here's what the stock hose actually looks like. It came out pretty easy. You can set them, put to the side. It's not reused during this installation, so you feel free to put it aside for now. It will not be reused during this installation. Now here we have our catch can bracket, which we're going to be installing in our intercooler mount location. I've already gone ahead and removed the 12mm bolt there, and that's how our catch can is going to be supported. So let's go ahead and install that using the factory 12mm bolt there with this bracket, and we'll be able to mount our catch can. So there we have it, guys. The catch can bracket is installed, and now what we're going to do is remove the two bolts out of the top of the catch can here and mate it to the bracket so it can fully support itself. Just for reference, here are the two bolts that we actually removed from the catch can to mate it to the bracket. Here we go. Our catch can is fully supported by the bracket, so just like we took out the two bolts that came on the catch can and used it on the bracket to support it from the bracket, and it's pretty sturdy. It's not moving at all. So let's go ahead and start rerouting our hoses. Before we begin the next section and routing all the hoses, we're actually going to prepare by actually installing this fitting coupling into our breather here. So let's go ahead and insert it, and I'm going to tighten up the actual clamp there. Go. Clamp is all tight. The coupling is installed. So this next section involves removing the passenger side intake. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the shroud here. It's a series of push pins you got to remove. I don't have a push pin tool, but I do have a small flathead that I can use to get them out. And our shroud should lift up. All right, so this next section we're removing the passenger side airbox. So we're going to go ahead and remove, there's a 10mm bolt there and a 10mm underneath this plastic shroud. Once we do that, there's a series of clips you got to take off the airbox and a couple of clamps, one on the top side and one on the side here. So let's go ahead and remove these out of the way. Pretty sure I already removed this side, so let's go ahead and take out this 10mm. There's one, and I got to loosen up the one on the other side. So you can lift this up, careful not to break it, and then you can hand thread it out. It comes out, the bolt should come out pretty easy. It's not a whole lot of threads on it. There it is, the second bolt. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually remove the clamps there and remove the front fascia of the intake, airbox I should say. Took me a little bit to get the airbox out of the way, but just remember the airbox has this little plastic piece that goes into that grommet right there. So just be careful not to not only break it, but wiggle it out of the way. It definitely took me a little bit of wiggling. And then next I'm gonna remove the top part of the airbox from the clamp back here. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect this the clip up here, and also the it's got a porched out clamp, which means it has to be released from both sides. I'll show you guys in a minute what trick I use to remove the clamp out of the airbox there. All right, so to remove the back end of the airbox here, what I'm gonna do is actually remove the MAF cable there, and I'm also gonna remove the clamp that holds the top part of this. Now there's a trick to it. To get it off, see if I can get some better lighting in there. There's a ring clamp right there, and another one right there. It's a Porsche style clamp. What you can do is you can put 2 screwdrivers and between that spacing allowed there and pry them both out at the same time, and you'll hear a click, and it should release the top part of the airbox here. So let's go ahead and do that now so I can show you guys how I get it done. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the MAF sensor. There it goes. That's disconnected. We'll put it out the way. Now what I'm gonna get is 2 screwdrivers to actually wiggle them out the way. All right, so what we're looking for is 2 clicks each time each side of the clamp is released. So we're gonna go ahead and release one. There's one, and here is the second one. So that's released. What I'm gonna do now is, well, it's kind of hard to do with one person, but the best way I can think of it is keep both sides pressed in, and you hear a really big click. You should be able to pull up on the top part of the intake box. And there it is. The back end has pulled out. Now, it may be a little bit difficult to see, but that on your passenger side is on your intake inlet. That is your crankcase ventilation hose. We're actually going to be removing that top one there and freeing up the inlet that stays in there so that we can connect our hose to it. And our breather hose is actually going to go to the top portion of that. So let's go ahead and remove that top clamp, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. All right, so after you remove the hose, that's what is left. It's sort of like an inlet, kind of like the ones in our catch can, except you just slip a hose on it and you should be good to go. But our hose is actually right here. Our crankcase ventilation hose is right here, and that's what we're going to be connecting to the breather that was included on the kit. So what we're actually going to do here now is take our breather filter and connect it to the crankcase ventilation hose. I'm going to use our new clamp that came with the kit, feed it on there, and then go ahead and connect it to that. So go ahead and grab a screwdriver and tighten this up. There we go. Just gonna leave that up here for now. Set it to the side. We'll accommodate it once everything's back together. But for right now, what I'm gonna do is just leave it on top of here. So there are 3 hoses now included with this kit. You have a really short hose that's connected from the PVC side through the inlet side of the catch can, which is the odd side. And then you have the hose, this is the middle size hose that goes from the intake manifold there to the middle dual port side. And you have the last port side, which is the longest hose that goes all the way into the CCV crankcase ventilation where it was connected at on the intake tube there. So that's what we're going to be hooking up next. I'm going to do the easiest hose first, which is of course, the PVC side and connected to the inlet side of the catch can. All right, guys, so the first hose is routed, and it goes from the inlet side of the catch can to the PCV, and that is right there. It's not a very far distance at all. It's actually pretty good clamps they provide with this kit, so everything's all secure. You can choose whichever way you like to route it. This is the personal preference that I found. Now the other 2 involve doing check valves, so we're actually going to have to slice off these hoses to install the check valves in between, but that shouldn't be a big deal. I also use a little bit of silicone lubricant on the fittings to be able to slide the hoses in a little bit easier. So this is the check valve that's included in the kit, and to simply put it into simplest terms, a check valve allows flow only in one direction. It doesn't allow reverse flow. So this will allow for anything to flow only in one direction. We're going to be installing 2 of these on the outer side of the catch can. So this is the inner, and this is the 2 outer ports that we're going to be installing the check valve. So we're going to be slicing our hoses here just a little bit on both hoses in the same section to install a check valve in our flow direction, and then continue to route those 2. We have one to route to the intake manifold and one to the CCV tube down there on the passenger side intake. All right, and just my personal preference, I prefer this red locking ring for both hoses over here. I think it looks pretty good. So you can also use 2 clamps that are provided, up to you, your preference. So both check valves are in. I had to make a slice on each of the hoses. Now the flow direction is facing out towards me, which is the way it's supposed to be facing. Now the middle size hose, that's the one that's going to go into the intake manifold over there. We're going to head and connect that one next, and I'll show you guys which way I decide to route that. And then last but not least, we'll end up hooking up the last hose to the intake tube over there. All right, so the second hose is installed, and that goes from the intake manifold to the first, or you could say middle port of the catch can itself. And there's a check valve right there, and then we have one more hose left to do. We're going to route it over to the intake inlet over there on the bottom part of the tube. So the routing part might be a little bit tricky, but we're going to go ahead and get it so we'll make sure we're not in the middle of anything and route that larger hose all the way down there. Now, as you guys know, the VR30 is extremely difficult to work in because it's so tight. There's not a whole lot of space to work in. So I actually found it easier to remove the clamp that goes to the turbo inlet for this entire piece of tubing here, as opposed to connecting this hose into this little fitting here while it's still connected to the turbo inlet. So I actually removed it. I'm going to connect it while it's out here and then put it back in. I found that's easier for me, whatever works for you guys, but that seems to be the way to go for this installation, especially if you have a hard time getting your hand in there. So it's really tough to work right around the alternator and all these sharp edges and stuff like that. So go ahead and remove it, make your life easier, and then put it back on. Alrighty, all three hoses are hooked up. We're just about wrapped up here. We're gonna put the intake back together and put things in their place, and we should be just about wrapped up here. I'm gonna clean this up as well to make sure that it doesn't hit anything. There's no clearance issues whatsoever, but so far it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out. Hey everybody, we're just about wrapped up with the installation here. All I have left to do is put the intake shroud back in, but I wanted to show you guys the last resting location of the breather filter and the routing of the hoses. And I also wanted to let you guys know this also works with the AMS or Infiniti intake system. I'm not sure about any others. I can only attest to that one since that's the only one that I've had on my car. So the AMS system definitely has the exact same like factory connections, just like this intake system does, the stock one. So you can feel free to install it on your aftermarket intake, no problem. And also want to say a special thanks to AdW1 for providing this high quality catch can today, and not only providing this for our channel, but also addressing the blow-by problem that we have in the VR30. Not only did they acknowledge the fact that there was more improvements to be made, and that's what this version 3.3 addresses. So thank you so much, AdW1. Link will be in the description. And for those of you who watch my channel consistently and avidly, thank you for your support. I look forward to your questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything like that. Feel free to comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next video. Peace.